Super quick warning, we are going to be using words that relate to sex, sexuality, genitalia, nakedness. Okay, what if the scene that you get is something that depicts a very intense and not okay thing, like a full-on rape? Like, how do you handle that?
So like if this scene is something that is triggering for you, if you are a survivor of sexual assault and you know this is going to be really hard for you, if you feel like this is going to be too hard for you to actually complete, talk to your professor first, because no acting will be had, like no acting will happen if you are constantly triggered, because your body, all it's focused on is regulating your nervous system. So if this is something that's beyond your scope, that's okay. Advocate for yourself and talk to your professor about it. If this is something that you feel you can handle and you want to go forward, great. Figure out what might be triggering for you. And also I'd like to point out too that just because you haven't necessarily had a situation like, whatever the scene is you're portraying, doesn't mean that you can't be triggered by something. It is incredibly scary to watch something that is violent, especially that shows sexual violence, even if that's something you haven't experienced yourself. So keep that in mind, and that it's valid for you to feel triggered or particularly emotional about something like this. So if you've decided that this is within your scope and you can handle this and you want to go forward with this, talk to your scene partner, talk about how you feel about the scene, and you're going to basically go through kind of a negotiation process. And it's kind of similar to, what we were talking about with stage fighting or stage intimacy, or any kind of filmed or on stage scenes like that. But you're going to talk about what is fair game, what is not. And with things like this, it's important to figure out, even if something's written into the script, is it important? Is it necessary for the scene, for the character? Because maybe there might be something physical that's written into the script that you don't feel comfortable doing, but you feel like there might be something similar that you might feel comfortable doing. So, talk through that and make sure that you kind of go through that, because basically you're setting up a non-consensual power exchange in this vacuum of a consensual power exchange. And so when you're navigating these scenes and when you're negotiating that, you want to make sure that you have made all of your boundaries, all of your limits very, very clear. Another thing that I highly recommend is using forms of safe words and safe signals. If something gets too intense and you need to stop in a rehearsal setting, or if you're workshopping something, if you need to stop, know exactly how to stop the scene. That's kind of the first thing that we talk about in BDSM, is how can we stop what's happening if something needs to stop. The general words used in the realm of kink are red and yellow, like the stoplights. Yellow means check in or slow down, or maybe we need to pause for a second, and red means like we need to stop, everything needs to stop. So knowing okay, what these words mean, and they might be different. So in an acting setting, it might be better to use a more ridiculous safe word that might not at all be in the scene that you're talking about, like pineapple or Starbucks or something like that. So talking about that, again, talking about if X then Y scenarios, like if I start to shut down, or if I start to cry, or, trying to kind of loosely predict how your body reacts to certain things like that. But it's really just the most important thing is communication and making sure you're on the same page with your partner at all times.
Yeah, no, that's so valuable. And if you are the person that is assigned the aggressor role in a scene, and you are just mortified of the possibility of even hurting your partner, what are ways that you can take care of them while you take on this huge responsibility of portraying this scene?
Yeah. So I think the first step is listen, be an active listener, ask them questions, ask how they're feeling, check in pretty frequently, unless your partner tells you otherwise. Really be an open and active listener. It might be helpful for, let's say you're working with someone who has experienced something similar in the scene. It might be helpful for them to share with you that trauma story. It might be empowering for them. So allowing, holding space for them and allowing them to kind of disclose with you this very personal information may be helpful. So like first step is just listening. Second thing, just open communication, constantly checking in, making sure that, they're good, and that you're good as well. Both are important. Know that you can stop at any time. That's why I like to use safe words. Making sure, before you run the scene, you confirm what those safe words are. That is super common in BDSM. Before the scene starts, a lot of people will have the bottom or submissive confirm what their safe words are. So you have a verbal confirmation, like we know we were on the same page about this. Another thing too is talk about aftercare. I would love to see aftercare way more normalized in non-BDSM settings. I would really love to see aftercare in all types of vanilla sex. I would love to see it happening in acting scenarios. But having that be involved in your negotiation conversation of what does aftercare look like for you? What would be helpful for me to do for you after this scene is over? Would you like some water? Do you want to be alone for a little bit? Do you want to kind of cuddle? Do you want a really big hug? Do you want to go out for a slice of pizza? Like offering what you can to make sure that this person knows that you care about them as a human being and you value them as a human being is so important. And knowing, like, it's really important to negotiate aftercare before you go into it, because once you've kind of like gotten into that mental state, it can be really hard to kind of communicate where you're at because your brain just might feel like mush. So knowing that ahead of time.
Especially because in an acting class, it's like you go up, it's your turn, you perform your scene, you're like adrenally up to here, and then it's like you're gonna get critiqued by your teachers and friends, and then just like awkwardly sit back down and just kind of be like, that is...
It's okay to like take a moment to go to the bathroom, splash some water in your face, take a moment, like listen to what you need. Like as actors, your body and your brain is your instrument, and you have to care for that instrument in order to be able to keep doing this. And so, we see time and time again what happens with actors who don't necessarily take care or prioritize their mental and emotional health when doing really, really intense roles. So I just think it's so important to be honest and open about how you're feeling literally at all times, because it is some heavy stuff that we see. It's really, really intense. So it's really important to kind of acknowledge that and provide the care that you need, and also provide care for the people that you're working with as well. I feel like in recent years, honestly, really just super, super recently, we've started to slowly move away we're starting to move away from this model of like self-care, like self-sufficiency, like I should be able to provide all of the care and love and support that I need, like for myself. And that's not possible. Like, humans are social creatures. We love to talk to other people. We love to be around other people, and it's okay to seek support from other people. And so that's why I like to kind of talk about community support. In addition to self-care, it is important to like take care of yourself and, give yourself time and space for loving yourself. But it's also important to be able to turn to your community. And this is like what's called interdependence rather than codependence. Relying on people for care, for support, in a way that values people's autonomy, people's consent, people's, emotional bandwidths at the time. I think it's so important to be able to reach out to people and ask like, hey, do you have the bandwidth? I need some support right now. And then you can know full well that you have, someone's holding space for you and you can express what you need. I think it's like the beauty of acting school is the community that you get from it. I didn't get my degree, I didn't get my BFA. Still, I'm like, some of my best friends are the people that I met in that program. And I think that, with acting in particular, everyone is at least capable of empathy. Like if you've been accepted into an acting program, you probably have an empathetic bone in your body and you can probably understand what people are feeling like. So I think actors especially have this cool opportunity to use these skills that we're taught to use in scene scenarios. We can use them as well in our interpersonal lives and with our friends and our lovers and our partners and our family and anyone in our lives at all.
Yeah. So maybe another good thing to say is being adamant about telling your class what your scene is going to include is important, because you might be like doing an incredibly well-rehearsed scene with your partner where you're like totally on the same page, it's going to be really intense, but you've like got it worked out. But if someone who is about to watch the scene is like not ready for this content and it's like 9 a.m. in acting class, that might be like a really hard day for them if they just watch two of their best friends have this incredibly violent scene happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say it should be illegal to have acting class at 9 a.m. Like that just should not be allowed. Like,
dear
we need
Lord,
at least a full breakfast and lunch before we get to the grit. Like
I had voice lessons at 9 a.m. every Friday for 3 years. It was oh my god. Honestly, it was like torture that is good now, because now when I go to like an audition at 9 a.m. I'm
an
like,
early morning audition. Yeah.
Rough.
Okay, so for one tip about giving notes in class, especially when dealing with scenes that are potentially violent or sexual in nature or just generally more intimate, let's say they made a choice and you disagree with it or think it wasn't right or something, before you critique them, ask them why that was their choice. It might not have been a choice, and so, that might be free reign to give the critique, but always ask before so you can understand, okay, where they're coming from, and then you can then decide, okay, does my critique hold up? Is it still relevant, knowing what their choice was? Or, can I move on or something? I think like you were saying, in the situation where if you're in a scene and like your body just has like a reaction to something, like you don't know, like someone might think like, oh, that was a weird choice or something, but you might just be like, no, that's just how I reacted. Like that's just what my body told me to do. So, talking about like what specifically, what people's choices are, I think are really important. And it also kind of establishes that idea of autonomy and consent and, things like that.
Another tip. So never assume that anyone has a specific type of pre-existing knowledge or experience regarding sex, because those assumptions tend to fall into like very heteronormative and cisnormative categories, and you just like, you don't know if like your partner is a lesbian with a rich sexual life that like has never interacted with a penis before, and if you go, just like do a blowjob and walk away, that's like not helpful at all. So if you break it down to say no one knows nothing, I'm going to use very exact language to say this is what is expected, then you can get so much further than just like dropping a direction and walking away from it.
Love that. Education is something that no one can ever take away from you unless it is challenged with new information. That is what I love about being an educator, and that is what I love about being a student and receiving education. It is a powerful, powerful tool. So remember to value it, and know that no one can ever take it away from you.
Sweet. My final thought: one day we will have trained intimacy coordinators in every set, in every classroom, and every rehearsal process. But until that day, I think it is very important for each of us to say, like, I need to take this on myself and to share this wealth with any peer that I come in contact with that might not have this. Even in like the professional world, sometimes you have to do callbacks with someone you just met and then you're like all over each other, and to say, hey, this is how I handle this. What are you okay with? Where can I touch you? Like instantly you just kind of diffuse all this tension out of a potentially risky situation. So I hope that this is helpful and will lessen the cringe in your future acting journey. And
Yes, we love to lessen the cringe.
Yes. So, thank you, Miss Cory B. You're so amazing. I am learning so much from you, and I hope that the people at home can follow you on all the platforms. Let us know where.
Yes, I am most active on my Instagram at Miss Cory B, MISSCORYB. I'm also on Twitter at Miss_Cory B. You can also check out my website, MissCoryB.com, to learn about all of the services I offer. You can check out my podcast, Never Have I Ever. We have 10 episodes out, as well as a bunch of mini-sodes. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you guys. Please share, subscribe, blah, 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 and love you. See you next week. Bye.